What is up, RotoGrinders? This is the three-game Christmas slate. Want to get it out of the way. Want to make sure you guys know we are recording this 11 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday. Some news may change, but as of right now, we're going to do the best we can to knock out the Christmas slate. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. We have 3 games. They get progressively uglier and uglier as the day continues. 3 home dogs by at least a touchdown. I know Netflix is bummed. I saw, if you guys watch on the Netflix, if you see on Netflix, it says like if you're gonna, I'm sure if you're not watching anything, it'll show you like here's a show you might watch. It's 28 days later. It's dystopia. It's it's a sci-fi. Maybe you'll like it. And it'd show me here you want to watch Dallas and Washington. And you know what the adjectives? Bless the advertiser, the PR people here buying for. They described it. Rousing and adrenaline rush is what Netflix is telling me, that the Josh Johnson's going to be rousing, and I'm going to get an adrenaline rush watching Josh Johnson. Do you agree with that? Is that the adjective you would have chose?
I just got to ask first, did they put it next, like you said, they recommend stuff? Was it next to like Liam Neeson movies or something? Is that how they lumped it in there? No, rousing is not what I would use for any of these games, though. I guess to their credit, it gets progressively worse, and that is the most rousing. So I guess if someone has to be called rousing on Christmas Day, it does probably have to be Cowboys Commanders.
The Lions used to be rousing, and we'll talk about that as well. We're going to go game by game. We're going to circle back, give our fair plays position by position. Too soon, Kyle. I'm sorry. Didn't introduce. This is Eric Bimefor. This is Kyle Murray. We'll be breaking down the 3-gamer. Again, we'll go game by game. We'll circle back, give our fair plays position by position. We won't hold you too long. We'll throw in some stacks in there as well, I'm sure. Kyle, you want to give me a screenshot, an overview of the slate? We're still kind of sorting through some information. We're going to do the best we can as far as injury clarity. Josh Johnson, the aforementioned Josh Johnson, 39 years old, by the way. Did not know he was that old. And only, I think it was only 9 career starts. I got that from Rebar. 1-8 for Josh Johnson. Maybe this is he's due for another victory. I think it was like 6 years ago when he started a game, 2018 or so, when he got himself a W. But yeah, Kyle, it's gross, right? And we're not going to lipstick on a pig, but they're the prize pools. We're all playing with the same players and the same concepts. And you don't necessarily have to put up 200 points. Just got to outscore everybody else. It's probably going to be pretty low scoring. You never know; it might surprise us. But general thoughts as far as we attack the plan to attack the slate. I know one of the things we like to do, so on Thanksgiving, similar setup is, we can backload. And it's like, you want to backload to the Kansas City Chiefs that have an 11.5 team total? Maybe. I don't know. How's that going to work out? Probably not great, but, we'll see. How are you attacking the slate? General overview, Kyle.
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, all this Josh Johnson talk. Somehow he isn't in a revenge game, or at least I don't think so. I tried to look it up quick before the show, but I don't remember being on the Cowboys. And I typed it in Google, and Google said, yes, Josh Johnson has played a game against the Dallas Cowboys on Christmas Day, 2025. So Google's all out of sorts. So I gave up that mission. But from what I can recall, not a revenge game, which is wild. And somehow he's also not the worst quarterback on the slate, which is also crazy. So that kind of sums up where we're at.
Is he slate. Even the second worst?
No, probably not. Certainly not from like a DFS perspective. But yeah, from like a real life perspective, probably not even the second worst. It's kind of a mess here with some of these quarterbacks, but nonetheless, the prize pools are still there. So hopefully we can find some good angles to attack.
So Google's telling me Josh Johnson's played for Tampa. That's where I remember him most. Cleveland, Cincinnati, San Fran, the Jets, Baltimore, the Commanders, and others. Also spending, I don't know why it just says others.
Played in Detroit.
Also spending time in spring leagues with UFL, the XFL, and the AAF. Shout out to the AAF. Yep. Okay. He's been bouncing all the Sacramento Mountain Lions. I don't know what that is. The San Diego Fleet.
That's got to be Arena League or something.
I don't know, but good for him, man. He's to keep cashing those checks. All right. Yeah.
Just quick, Dean. I'm remembering this now. It's all coming back to me, the Josh Johnson experience. He was the quarterback who played in the game against the Eagles for the 49ers. Remember when Purdy hurt himself in the conference championship game? Josh Johnson was his backup at that time. And then Josh Johnson came in and he got hurt, and Purdy had to go out there and play, with one arm. They couldn't throw a forward pass.
The game was over before it started. Yeah.
That was the last time we seen Josh Johnson in like a meaningful game, I guess.
And that's like 5 years ago, and he's 39 now?
2020. That was 2023.
Oh, okay. Jeez, time is a flat circle. Buying 4. Give me your just kind of overview, your screenshot again. There's I guess 3 terrible quarterbacks. And 3, the buckets are distinctly, you're either in the good bucket or the bad bucket. The buckets I think are pretty clear. Doesn't mean you can't play them, right? But Goff, Prescott, and Knicks, I guess, is in the good bucket. I guess we'll see. He has good games and bad games, but yeah. How are you seeing this slate overview wise? And yeah, what sort of angles are you cooking up over there?
I'm still working on the angles because it is still really eye popping to kind of try to walk through the slate and find guys you want to play. But I do think, I mean, those first 2 games are really, really strong, and this is not news to anyone. That's where the ownership is going to be, relatively speaking. Like you said, backloading, not of interest to me. And frankly, for me, like the Broncos are going to win, right? But in a scenario in which they win, where what is this guy's name? Chris Ayukin or whatever. Like, I'm not that interested in this game being a shootout. I'm not that interested in the Broncos like being, pushing the ball through the air. I know they played a little bit poorly last week against Jacksonville, but if anything, right, it's going to be something with RJ Harvey, probably the defense, maybe like a Broncos receiver or something. Pat Bryant, of course, suffered a pretty gnarly concussion last week, so he's going to be out. And so there's maybe a little bit of value there, but there's also a little bit of value on these other teams where there's like, I don't know, Cowboys Commanders is going to score a bunch of points. Like, it's not meaningful for the playoffs, and it's Marcus Mariota, and it's pretty gross. But is it? It's Josh Johnson.
Yeah,
but there's still going to be fantasy points. It's a Cowboys game, right? Dak Prescott is playing, CeeDee Lamb is playing. Like, there's going to be fantasy points in that game, and so finding ways to combat that ownership, which is what other people are going to play into that ownership, but like finding a little bit unique angles to the 1.5 good games that we do have, I think is really my focus. We'll talk about the Lions, like you mentioned. I think you can do different things with the Lions than the field is going to do. And then I think you can do some fun things with the Commander side of that game, because the Cowboys defense is still, Javon Diggs is back and he's getting roasted, and everybody's getting roasted in that secondary. And I still think Washington is going to be able to manufacture some points. So finding just like some different angles to like the definitely chalky games.
Chris Oladukin. I was looking at Doken. I got the phonetic spelling. I had to give it a Google. I have to confess I was not aware of his existence until just recently. South Dakota, maybe South Dakota State. One of the Dakotas is where he went to college. Not a lot of wheels in college, for what it's worth, either when it comes to rushing yards. Okay, let's do it.
They brought back Shane Buechele. I thought Shane Buechele was going to be their Phillip Rivers. I thought that they signed him off his couch, and I thought he was going to get like a walkthrough and then have to play the Broncos on Christmas Day. That would have been great.
Talk to me about who's Shane Buechele. I feel like that name sounds familiar, but it's not quite.
SMU.
Okay.
Yeah. He was a solid college quarterback, right? Like put up a bunch of passing yards, but not a good NFL quarterback.
Yeah, I don't college. I'm not your guy. If you're on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and the category is college, I'm not your phone of friends. Is that still on? I don't know why I'm referencing that. We shall move on. Let's talk about Dallas. Dallas and Washington is the first game, 1:00 on the East Coast. The first half of the Netflix doubleheader. 50.5 total. It's the biggest total on the board. Dallas is the biggest team total, closing in on 28.5, depending on where you're looking. The Commanders do have a team total around 21 or so, which is, I guess, fourth highest, right? Behind Dallas, Detroit, and Denver. They are 7-point home dogs here, Kyle. How we attacking this game? Because, it does, something's got to be the most appealing game. This is probably the most appealing game, but not the next one we'll discuss. But, Dallas and Washington, start wherever you want to start.
Yeah, certainly the most appealing game. Obviously, highest total on the board. Probably the game with the two most evenly, I guess, adjusted quarterbacks, because I think in the other two games you have two pretty awful quarterbacks, and Josh Johnson at least has been good enough to stay in the league and get all of these contracts. So as not good as he is, I think there's a case to be made that, again, he's probably the third worst on the slate, which I think could go a long way on a slate like this where you have games with three backup quarterbacks in each game. So I think it's an interesting dynamic there. But the key thing for me is the defense. There's just not much being played on the Washington side. Dallas has improved defensively a little bit. We'll see how their injury report looks come tomorrow and what they're able to roll out with some of the injuries that they're going to have on their defensive side. But I certainly think that this is definitely the most appealing game, and that ownership will likely follow that as well. In terms of the quarterbacks, we have Dak projected as the highest scoring quarterback on the slate. I think you can, maybe make a case for a couple other guys as your favorite quarterback on the board, but I think Dak's going to be probably the guy I slot in as the top quarterback without adjusting for ownership and whatnot. So Dak Prescott certainly is going to grade out as a strong play. The passing game for both, obviously CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens. Compare both of those guys up, considering it's a small slate. And if you wanted to even attack the rushing angle as well, I think bottom line, the way I'm going to approach it is having one of the, attacks for offense, whether it's rushing or passing, just because I think that this is where the production is going to come from on this slate, 28.5 or so implied total for Dallas. So I'm going to be either utilizing the passing game or Javonte Williams. Then I'm sure I'll have some lineups with both as well.
Yeah, potential onslaughts as well. Should note, keeping around just Kevin Roth as this game is green. Whether we should be fine. This stuff is fluid. This stuff changes. Check back, circle back. But we got a dome in Minnesota. Kansas City was not even on the weather page, weather report. So I assume it's fine in KC as well. So I assume weather a non-issue on Christmas. Eric, are you leaning in on Dallas as well? Is this good chalk? This Dallas offense?
Yeah, definitely good chalk. I would have to imagine, I can't believe we're talking about this with these three matchups on Christmas, but like from a motivation perspective, and like you always just have a little bit of, are we going to keep playing Javonte Williams, 80% of snaps when it's kind of over. And I do tend to think so. I think that Dallas is going to continue to play, kind of the same offense that we have been seeing them play. And Ryan Flanoy, of course, got hurt in that game, which we'll see what's up with him. He's really been emerging. He's like a sneaky important piece, I think, in this game. If he plays, given the injury that he suffered this past Sunday, will he, be full go? If he is, those are kind of some of the guys I would like to take shots on. Right.
Otherwise, Turpin season, maybe.
Right. Exactly. But that's if he doesn't play, right? Kevontae Turpin, are they going to play Jonathan Mingo? I don't know. Jalen Tolbert seems to be, completely gone from their plans, but those types of things, the Zach Ertz, right, is still out. Maria mentions Debo has incentives. I do imagine that some of these coaches want to do some of those kinds of things. So that's where sort of bullying the projections, if you will, right? Like bullying the Sims and stuff and being like, look, I understand how the projections are being made up here, but finding some of the stuff around the edges with the Flanoy, with the Turpin, with a Ben Sinnott, with a Malik Davis, right? Or do they want to see if Malik Davis is part of the team next year as opposed to just Javonte? Those are kind of some of the things that I'm looking into, because I do think Javonte is going to be pretty popular, as is the Dallas passing game. I'm a little more focused on the Dallas passing game because in some of these other games, I do have quite a few running backs that I like in these other spots. So it's still going to be the boring Dak, CD, Pickens, but I'm looking to what's up with Flanoy. Can we play Turpin? Turpin is a really fun, even if Flanoy plays, quite frankly, is a really fun, three game slate type guy. Come in, get his 4, 5, 6 touches, and he's like the fastest man alive. He can take one of these to the house at any moment. So looking for some of those kinds of guys, a Turpin, a Flanoy, what have you, Ben Sinnott, etc. That
is he
are just
Turpin?
Yeah.
Double
That's
dip?
what Jaden Blue can't get activated because he's basically just a kick returner, and they already have Kevontae Turpin to be their kick returner. So yeah, you could double dip it, but it's just another path to he could score 6 points without touching the ball on offense. And there's not a lot of super cheap guys that can do that on this slate. So again, these ancillary weapons in this game particularly are of high priority to me.
I thought Debo was having such a bad season. I didn't realize incentives were possible. 68 catches, 639 yards, 2 games left. I just gave a quick AI Google. $3 million in performance incentives in his contract. Let's see. Incentives, these are part of the reworked 1-year deal. $200K for 5 more catches, $250K for 96 more yards. Really? You paid him all that money and this is what you're expecting? 750 yards? Okay. He's been pretty terrible and possibly playing through stuff, and maybe that's why he's playing through stuff. To hit those incentive thresholds. We've not seen him hit double digits in fantasy points in since week 11, week 13, where he scored 11 fantasy points, so just barely got there. There's Scary Terry obviously lurking, and then the backfields, C-Rod and Bill, JCM, they're just running the ball basically. They dump it off to McNichols. There's nothing really appealing here. I guess these guys can fall in the box for sure, but that's how they're going to get there. They're not really going to get there with through the passing game as well. Do you have a preference amongst these three, Eric? It's not great. C-Rod, McNichols.
I think it's C. I think it's C-Rod, but I did this. I've done this on a couple different slates. So the Washington backfield is so fascinating, where it's like, look, you can spend all your mental energy trying to figure it out, and good luck. But they do have like set roles, right? And so that can work for a slate like this, where C-Rod is almost assuredly going to continue to start the game, right? Get the first drive, but he's the early down back. Right. This is like old school. They have a LeGarrette Blount and they have a James White. They're not as good, but that's what they have in this backfield. Chris Rodriguez and Bill kind of split that early down rushing work, right? And they kind of hot hand it after the first few drives between those two guys. But McNichols is the passing down back. He will continue to be the passing down back. And so if this gets out of hand, which it very well might, Dallas could get up 3 scores here. McNichols is going to be the guy that's like, if you knew what the score was at halftime, you would know how to project these running backs, but we don't know that. And so McNichols does come another one of those ancillary guys that's like, he doesn't look good. It doesn't feel good. But if they get down 20 points, all of a sudden he looks like one of the better plays on the slate.
How do you feel about the Washington offense here, Kyle?
I think this is a spot where if you were looking to chase down maybe some lower owned plays, you made a case that this is going to be the team that you want to do so with, and that doesn't maybe necessarily feel all that great considering the players that we're talking about. But when you look across the rest of the slate, like you have Dallas, Detroit, Denver that are likely going to be the teams that get the ownership, and then the underdogs in these games, Washington, Minnesota, Kansas City, going to be the teams getting a little bit overlooked, and Washington has the highest implied team total of those three underdogs, and the other two, it gets really ugly really fast. So I think Washington is certainly a team that you can make a case for, looking for some of these lower owned plays. You have Terry and Debo, who we project for some ownership right now, but wouldn't be surprised if they end up coming down and get a little bit squeezed just with people not fitting these guys in as priorities. Treylon Burks, we saw have a decent game last week. I think that he's probably a guy who's going to be a little bit reliant on a big play in order to get there, but he did have 5 targets, only caught 2 of those passes. But again, if he gets 5 targets again, catches 3, 4 of them, one happens to be for a touchdown at 3-3, he can certainly pay off that price tag. I think the way Eric broke down the running back situation for Washington was perfect. This game is the closest in terms of the spread, or tied with the Detroit game. So, it does sound like, okay, we can assume that Washington's likely going to lose this game, and therefore, we'll like McNichols more. But from an ownership perspective, it's still a 7-point spread. Like we could easily see a couple of fluky things happen here to where Washington, the home team, maybe they are able to keep a lead through the first 2 or 3 quarters or whatnot. So maybe you have a little bit of extra value with the guy like Rodriguez or McNichols, who I don't think, or JCM, who I don't think anybody's going to really play here. I don't think I'm overly curious in doing that either. Again, we'll have to see that injury report there for Dallas to see. I haven't looked and I haven't seen an update on Quinnen Williams, but he was out. He was out last week, and that's certainly a big. I mean, it's no surprise that when they acquired him, their run defense instantly improved overnight. So if he's out again, that would be a spot where I would upgrade one of those running backs. I think I do prefer Rodriguez. It has been McNichols heavily favored in the passing game, but Rodriguez did run, I believe it was 10 routes last week. So again, if he's a guy who can maybe get lucky and catch a couple of passes, and as well as find that goal line work, we could see some value there. So Rodriguez is probably the guy that I would prefer if I'm looking to play that sort of narrative where maybe Washington keeps a little bit closer. He would probably correlate better with the passing game of Dallas. And then maybe McNichols would pair a little bit better with Javonte Williams. So thinking about those sorts of things and building the lineups is where I think you could maybe find a little bit of added correlation there, and especially to go with some lower ownership because, again, nobody really wants to play Jeremy McNichols. Nobody wants to play Treylon Burks. But on a slate like this where there's a lot of ugliness around the board, and sometimes you have to kind of take those certain game script narratives in order to get there.
I don't know if anybody wants to play a tight end, but you got to play a tight end. Ferguson has got the highest projection, just barely over currently questionable TJ Hawkinson and Travis Kelce. How much do we want to, it seems like a spot where you can just kind of punt it off and maybe every tight end just misses, Eric. You could make that bet. There's, I don't know what the percentage chance, like a 30% chance that just all tight ends just miss. Basically, is any tight end actually going to break the slate? Probably not. I know Travis Kelce, I guess he's incentivized to take over. Is it Jason Witten, who's got the second most receiving yards all time? I did the math. He was 96 behind last week, and now he's 92 behind. He's at one catch for 4 yards. So he's got 92 yards. I don't know if he cares about that. Second all time for tight end receiving yards. But do we like Ferguson? Is that someplace we want to spend some salary? Are we just going to punt this position off, buying for?
I mean, you said, it will a tight end break the slate, and you just threw out a 30% number. It's got to be much higher than that, than no tight end, right? Look at the tight end, like there. So what you would think, right? Okay, Travis Kelce, Lions, you would like think Sam Laporta, but of course he's out. So we got this Brock Wright, Anthony Firkser. By the way, they kept saying Firkser on the broadcast, and it was driving me absolutely bonkers. Like they were dyslexic there. But anyway, so like Anthony Firkser, Travis Kelce with so like TJ Hawkinson, is he even going to play? Maybe if TJ Hawkinson doesn't play, that opens up Josh Oliver. Maybe Josh Oliver is in play regardless, but you got Max Brosmer, right? I that's why I mentioned Ben Sinnott, and I get it. This is like, you're going to keep doing this Ben Sinnott thing, right? It's like, so, this guy's out. Ben Sinnott never does anything when Zach Ertz misses games. He did play like 70% of the snaps last week, and it is the most fun kind of game environment, given the fact that we have Brosmer and no Mahomes in the late game. So I'm probably going to do that. You can of course play Jake Ferguson. He's really become an afterthought in their passing game. He's still the most likely tight end to score a touchdown by a country mile. So that may be enough. It would be kind of a Ferguson versus Sinnott thing for me, pending the TJ Hawkinson news, of course. I'm just not playing. I'm sorry, Travis Kelce with this guy at quarterback. Like, no,
you're not buying the narrative. He's going to get them all in the last week of the season.
I'm buying. He wants to get that many yards. I'm not buying it's humanly possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough scene there for Kansas. I thought was the Raiders at an 11.5 or a 12 total, and now the Kansas City. That was last week, and now KC's got the same total there.
Those poor people that bought those tickets. Can you imagine, like, happy Christmas present? I spent $500 on Chiefs Broncos on Christmas Day, and now you can't give them away.
Give it a Google. I wonder what the prices are. Actually, you're right. That's probably plummeted as far as, because you figure the beginning of the season, Denver at home versus Kansas City, this is going to have divisional implications. Yeah, life comes at you fast. A hell of a run though for Kansas City, but it's obviously halting here this week. Lamb or Pickens, Kyle? You can only pick one. Who do you prefer?
That's been the question all year. I think for me, I'm probably giving the slight edge to CeeDee Lamb. To be completely honest, there probably won't be many lineups where I'm playing one and not both, because if I'm playing Dak Prescott, I'm probably going to have both of those guys.
Okay.
But in the stacks without Dak Prescott, I'm sure I'll still have one of these Dallas pass catchers. So in those situations, I would probably lean CeeDee Lamb, but in all honesty, it'll probably be an ownership question for me. I probably will have an easy time just saying, okay, the tiebreaker is going to be the ownership. So if I'm looking to play the less popular option, that's easily what I could do at $300 difference. But I think coming off of last week's game, George Pickens might be the one to get a little bit more steam. And we know both these guys have huge ceilings, so they can both certainly get it done. Obviously, Pickens had the big game last week, so I'm thinking maybe people will have a little bit more of an eye on him, especially at a little bit of a discount. So I think I'll go CeeDee Lamb as the slight favorite there for me.
Probably a lot of casuals play into on Christmas, I imagine. I feel like the casuals are going to lean in. Whatever you think might be chalk, I think Lamb and Pickens and Dallas probably going to get even more as far as ownership. Bob, for anything else you want to say as far as this game, or shall we scoot along?
I'll just say that Marier mentioned any interest in Malik Davis. I think so. I think not like in a probably small field tournament. I don't feel like I need to get that fancy, but it's just one of those. How can anyone, like, these teams are done? Do they want to play Javonte to see what more they have with him? Do they want to see Malik? Do they even care about seeing Malik Davis? He was like the RB5 on the team before the season started. I don't know, but he has been eating into Javonte if it's like a 50-50 split. Would I be surprised? No. So I think, yeah, he would be in my player pool. And then Kyle mentioned Treylon Burks. I think Treylon Burks is like objectively a pretty good play on this slate. He ran the same amount of routes and everything as Terry McLaurin, more than Debo did last week. That Jalen Lane got hurt, right? Noah Brown has had a wasted season. No Zach Ertz. And I'll be honest, Treylon Burks has looked not awful with Washington. That's the nicest thing I can say. But he's made some really good catches. And if they're losing, all of a sudden you go from 4 targets because they threw the ball 20 times to like he's running every route. When they're trailing, I think he's definitely in play.
Is he your favorite, like 4K or less? We talked about the Dallas GPs. Burks. We'll talk about Tesla, Raymond, Naylor. I don't know if you've power ranked these guys, but is he like on the podium at least? He's in the conversation.
This should be my sweet spot. I love power ranking the absolutely disgusting bad players, but I think so. I would say, you want a really gross one? I think Lil Jordan Humphrey is right in this ballpark with Treylon Burks. We're really throwing it back here, but again, Pat Bryant got seriously injured, and as much as we would like to make Marvin Mims a thing, it's not a thing. He's a gadgety guy or whatever. Every time a guy has been out, Lil Jordan Humphrey has stepped into like a real role, and I can think of nothing better than a Christmas present from Sean Payton to Lil Jordan Humphrey, his buddy, getting him a touchdown or whatever. So I think that those two guys are like atop that list. And Turpin is pending Flournoy, which it doesn't seem like he's going to play, but I don't want to like say definitively on Tuesday.
Lions, Minnesota, 43.5 total. The Lions are currently 7.5 point favorites in Minnesota. Max Brosmer expected to draw the start here with McCarthy injured. Detroit still mathematically alive. I don't know if they believe, but it's like, 2-3%, 4%. Of course, that game last week, just a horrible, horrible ending for them. Amon-Ra scored a touchdown. They called offensive pass interference, and then they scored a really funky touchdown with on a lateral. There was another penalty there. And Kyle, you were probably watching it as a Detroit fan, I imagine. And the ref trolled everybody by goes, it was a touchdown. But I mean, really, what a great troll job by the referee. And then he ran out of that stadium as fast as he could. Lions, Minnesota, Kyle, I'll let you start.
I think the one thing, the Detroit team, the way that they're set up, especially with Dan Campbell at the helm, they're going to play as hard as possible, even with that 1 or 2% chance. So I think that's something that you can at least lean into on a set like this. The matchup isn't great. Minnesota defense has been pretty good. But nonetheless, you certainly have two of the probably biggest names. Obviously, you have the Dallas bunch that they have had some really solid success throughout the year. But Jahmyr Gibbs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, even Jameson Williams, these are some of the bigger names in fantasy, across the league. So they're certainly going to have some ownership. I have no problem playing them at current ownership, especially Jahmyr Gibbs, 8-3 on a small slate where there's, not only, I wouldn't say there's even like value on the slate. I think that there's just natural spots where you don't want to spend salary, like tight end. We're going to talk about defense. You can punt at a little bit. There's a couple of cheap wide recievers. So there's just a lot of ways to, not shoot yourself in the foot while playing some of these cheap guys. So spending up and getting Gibbs does feel, pretty solid. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown, same token there in terms of, strategy of being able to play him. I think that it comes down to how I'm prioritizing Jared Goff compared to some of these other quarterbacks. Jared Goff in the dome is certainly going to be, better than if he were to be projecting outside, which has been a significant split for him throughout the entire course of his career. I think he'd probably be my second favorite quarterback on the slate, not considering price or ownership. But I think if he's going to be significantly less owned than Dak Prescott, I don't mind leaning into this Detroit team as a stack in this spot, especially if, we're in a spot where Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be like 70% owned. The Dallas passing game is going to be like 50-60% owned. You can easily find ways to just flip the script on those two teams there. Maybe play Javonte Williams and play the Detroit passing game. There's plenty of high upside options on Detroit as well. So right now, that's kind of where I'm approaching this Detroit slide. So that's, at least from an ownership perspective, we'll see where the ownership numbers actually finalize probably tomorrow morning or later tonight. But that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah, Flores was throwing some funky stuff at Detroit the first time around. I think Gibbs had his worst game of the year. Not a lot of touches. He was in there to block. I think Montgomery had the block as well, too. So, and also like speaking of blocking, this offensive line is just so disheveled. Detroit, they had 3 centers last week, and the line is just there's not really much going on there. The blocking has been horrendous. 7 carries for 2 yards last week for Gibbs. He's sucked out on 10 catches. 10 catches for 66 yards and a touchdown. He's going to catch the ball, of course, but probably not 10 times 13 targets. By the way, shout out to the chat. Hit that like button. Do subscribe. Do turn on those notifications. And specifically shout out to Joshua Johnson in chat. He says, "Don't worry, guys. I got this." Joshua Johnson. Joshua. And I see what you're doing there, Joshua. So shout out to Joshua. So we have to give them more analysis for Washington. Or we're gonna keep it as we gave it. Buying for Detroit. How do we feel about the Lions and Minnesota?
I mean, this is to me like the biggest decision point of the slate because the Lions are certainly going to score some form of points, right? They even last week, as bad as they were. Also, Aaron Rodgers is so annoying to watch. Like the Lions, literally, he plays to run the clock out, and it's so frustrating. Someone with Gibbs and JMO and everything last week, watching them run 3 plays, one of which was a safety in the third quarter, was not a lot of fun. But if you watch that game, you mentioned the offensive line thing was what I was going to bring up because it's going to be easy to say, okay, Max Brosmer, the Lions should bounce back right off of they're always going to continue to keep playing hard, and they are. All those things are true. It's not anywhere near this level. But like when I talked about Travis Kelce, I'm like, I know he wants to get records. Can he physically do it with this guy throwing him the ball? That's the problem with the Detroit Lions. The offensive line is objectively terrible. They went from like that was one of the greatest strengths in all of the entire NFL to they have one good guy now, Penei Sewell, and he can't block everybody. And Brian Flores knows that. And Brian Flores is going to do what Brian Flores does. You can run on Minnesota, but Detroit did not run on Minnesota in the first matchup. That was with a healthier offensive line. Last week now it's Pittsburgh and there was play volume issues. Gibbs had 7 carries for 2 yards against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now the Pittsburgh Steelers are a better run defense than Minnesota, but there's no TJ Watt over there. It's not like the Steelers were at full strength. It's not like the Steelers we've been like, oh no, can't play a running back against the Steelers. So I'm really torn. I think Gibbs is going to be super duper popular because he should be, and he projects far and away for the most raw points at the running back position and some of the most raw points, if not the most, on the entire slate. But I think from a leverage perspective, and if you believe in this offensive line stuff, if I'm Brian Flores, I got Max Brosmer. I'm not sitting back and letting Jahmyr Gibbs run. What was it last year that Jahmyr Gibbs had like 5 touchdowns against this team or something and just went absolutely nuclear? Like I'm not letting them run the ball on me. He's going to keep bringing pressure. That can create some seams. But it makes me interested in the passing game on the Detroit side of things, getting away from Jahmyr Gibbs or playing David Montgomery, right? David Montgomery's been kind of weeded out of the backfield rotation as they've been in like must-win games every single week. Technically, they are still alive, but it's like a 2% chance. It would feel to me like, okay, maybe now let's get Demont a little bit like, right? It's over. The season is essentially over. We can still beat Minnesota by giving David Montgomery more touches. I think that there's just a level of risk with Jahmyr Gibbs that is higher than it seems, which is like what opens up kind of Pandora's box for the slate, right? What other running backs would you even play? Do you play Amon-Ra? Do you play Goff stacks? That's kind of where my brain is at is I'm a little bit concerned about Jahmyr Gibbs because he's going to be like, how's it like? I mean, 75% owned or something on this slate.
Yeah, and the setup is not great because that line, and he still can get there with a bunch of dump offs, right? Like he sucked out last week.
But they were losing, right? Like, are they going to be losing to Max Brosmer for him to catch a bunch of passes? That's another concern, right?
I don't hate the idea, by the way, of playing Minnesota defense and Lions pieces, just sort of throwing that out there, a way to be different. I can see, and all you need is just one play, basically, for defense on a 3-game slate, unless something really goofy happens. But like, I'm assuming you're loosening those kind of rules up, Eric. Like that's something you're willing to do.
Yeah. Big time. Yeah. Every game's like a Jameis Winston game in this one.
You can pick JMO or Amon-Ra as salary considered. You have a lean there, by far.
I still lean JMO. Amon-Ra, I think, has like the just total nuclear ceiling that JMO probably doesn't quite have, but they've been close to peers in terms of especially salary adjusted. Like without Sam Laporta, I mean, they just don't have anybody else to throw the ball to. A little bit of Raymond, a little bit of Tesla, but I think JMO, like you said, salary included, it's a $1,500 savings, and I think he's going to be a little bit lesser owned. We project him lesser owned. I think against the Flores blitzing scheme and stuff too, right? Get JMO. The last thing you do is want to give a seam to JMO. He's going to be gone. So I think his upside's pretty fun here. I like him a little bit more.
Kyle, talk to me about the Vikings.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I don't want to give away too much of the behind the paywall stuff, but Mr. Grant Neefer actually has some interest in Max Brosmer. And I know he's been betting some ugly quarterbacks throughout the course of the year. He had some luck on Monday night with Phillip Rivers. But, I mean, in terms of, Brosmer, when you talk about the situation he stepped into in his first game, which obviously, unfortunately, I'll say he probably embarrassed himself. That pick six that he literally handed to the Seahawks. I'm sure he wasn't too thrilled with that. But that's also a very difficult situation, right? You're going into Seattle, which is a known environment. They call themselves the 12th man. It's a very difficult place to play. It's outdoors, very good defense. Now you'll get a spot here against Detroit that's been a bad defense as of late, especially a bad secondary. You're at home. So it's certainly a better spot here. I know Max Brosmer has been a guy who has had some hype through the preseason and maybe through the draft process and stuff. I think it was a spot that maybe I didn't want to get too, overwhelmed by, because I didn't think he looked all that great in college. Obviously, he played at a school in Minnesota that, he wasn't given a great chance to showcase a lot. But nonetheless, there are some people who I do respect, who think that he has some upside here. And obviously, it's a good situation, right? You're playing with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison. So I think we should be expecting more than what we saw in that Seattle game. But nonetheless, still a spot where I have my question marks around Max Brosmer. But on a slate like this, where you got question marks all over the place, you can make a case for it. And I would say that he's probably the highest upside passing product of these underdog quarterbacks. I think Josh Johnson's maybe a little bit more interesting, because he does have some mobility that we've seen over the course of the years, even though he's almost 40 years old. But Max Brosmer, I think, has the best matchup and the best weapons. So he's probably the underdog I'm most excited to play, or at least most willing to play. Maybe excited is not the best word. But obviously, Jefferson hasn't really been able to get going much with J.J. McCarthy, but maybe we can find a little bit of a spark with Brosmer. I wouldn't necessarily die on that hill, but if you're looking to play a narrative like that, I certainly think that pairing Brosmer up with one of Jefferson and Addison, or both, and then maybe even a guy like Jalen Naylor, who we've seen score a couple times over the last few weeks, so maybe he can be a value option as well. Like you guys mentioned, the tight end slate's pretty brutal, but if Hockenson plays and you're playing Brosmer, you can pair those guys up. If Hockenson doesn't play, you have Josh Oliver, who we've seen be annoying to TJ Hockenson rosters over the past couple of years. Maybe he can have a more expanded role there. But so all in all, I would say the Minnesota passing game is somewhat appealing for me. Detroit has been a pretty significant run funnel, but with Aaron Jones benefiting from the absence of Jordan Mason, he does have to get an uptick here on the ground, as well as what we know he can do in the passing game. So Aaron Jones, I think, is also going to be a pretty popular play, and I think he's certainly a guy who has a strong median projection. I guess we'll see what the ceiling is. I would say if Aaron Jones has a big ceiling game, it's going to come from either touchdowns or him, like multiple touchdowns, or him catching 4, 5, 6 passes. I don't think he's going to have a game where he has 12, 13 carries for like 120 yards. I do think that this Lions run defense has been solid enough to hold that up, and I think that they are going to be a team that draws a lot of pass attempts, especially if they do get ahead in this one. So Aaron Jones, I think, has a ceiling, but I think it's going to be a little bit game script dependent. But luckily, it does pair well with a lot of ways that you want to build around this slate, because if you are playing several Detroit guys expecting them to put up some points, Aaron Jones could easily get it done through the air. So Jones is probably going to be my favorite Vikings play, considering outside of Justin Jefferson. But I do think there's at least still some reasons to be optimistic about Minnesota on a slate like this. If there was maybe any more games, maybe not, but on a 3-game slate where it's all pretty gross, Minnesota does have a decent spot on it.
I do agree with you. Brosmer amongst the gross quarterbacks. I wouldn't say I'm excited, or as Netflix want me to say, roused. I'm not roused to play Max Brosmer or to watch Max Brosmer, but he would probably be my favorite amongst the nonsense. Hockenson is currently questionable. I was curious. I don't know a heck of a lot about Josh Oliver. I've seen him pop up here and there, but I was curious what his player profile or comp is, and this will get you excited. Hayden Hurst. Oh. There you go. Vinefor, what do you want to say as far as Minnesota?
I will say I'm just glad we got a comp that isn't of how they look It's nice that we have it's not like he comps to Wes Welker. I'm like, well, he's a white slot receiver, so yeah, I get it. But they paid Josh Oliver a bunch of money. It was one of those weird, like, why is Josh Oliver making like $9 million a year to back up TJ Hawkinson? I don't remember the exact number, but I remember the extension. He's been involved, right? So I think the TJ Hawkinson news is kind of big because even though I touted Ben Sinnott, I don't really want to play Ben Sinnott with Josh Johnson throwing, almost said Ben Johnson, with Josh Johnson throwing him the ball. And I think Josh Oliver would end up being the best tight end play if TJ Hawkinson doesn't play in this game, all things considered, with the game environment, the dome, right? Brosmer being the best of these terrible quarterbacks. I will say I second everything that Kyle said. Also agree. Shout out Grant. Grant is a ladder better, which is myself as well. And so I always respect somebody that's over 250 Quinn Ewers passing yards is always wild to see come across your phone. But I think he definitely has the most upside here. And I think he even if he doesn't have like a good fantasy game, right, because maybe Aaron Jones steals a goal line touchdown or something, I do think he's the most live to, like, Rajon Rondo it, right? Like, just get it to JJ enough so that JJ has a good game. Get it to Josh Oliver a handful of times so he's the optimal tight end or whatever. And just, like, keep them afloat enough in this spot. Justin Jefferson did have 8 targets last week, actually finally had a good game in the game that JJ McCarthy got hurt. So maybe, JJ McCarthy throwing 150-mile-an-hour fastballs every single time just doesn't mesh well.
Can I just say, not to cut you off, he had 6 catches for 8 yards. 6 catches for 85 yards, 14.5 DK points. That's a different bar of Justin Jefferson good game than it was earlier in this. It's a better game than he's had in the last month and a half, maybe 2 months. It's still not really good, though. But
the last time he had 20 was at the beginning of October, Dean.
It's been bad. Yes, it's been very 14, bad. It's the new good.
Yeah, he's Wan'Dale Robinson, okay? We just have to live with it. It sucks, but that is what if he gets 20, it's an awesome game for Justin Jefferson. But on this slate against this Lions defense, they're gonna they run man coverage at the second highest rate in the entire NFL. That's good for Justin Jefferson. That's actually kind of good for Brosmer because it's like, you got man coverage, throw it to JJ, right? There's not a lot of thinking involved in that. So if Hawkinson is out, I will like Hawkinson. But if Hawkinson's out, I really do like Josh Oliver. Justin Jefferson is my favorite Minnesota Viking. The Aaron Jones thing is really kind of mind blowing though, because the Lions have been like super easy to figure out what to do from a DFS perspective, like with opponents. They shut down the run for 2 years in a row. Like, you couldn't run on them at all. All of a sudden, over the last couple of weeks, particularly last week, just like the parting of the Red Seas when Jaylen Warren is running through the line, right? Kenny Gainwell and Jaylen Warren combined for like 60 fantasy points against these guys. This Vikings team is not the Steelers or whatever, but Jones is going to be, if he's like mega chalk, I'm going to kind of like hold to my briars and be like, all right, I think the Lions run defense, it's just a little bit fluky. The Vikings couldn't run on the Giants. So like, what are they really going to run on this Lions team? But if people aren't going to play Aaron Jones, I would be really interested in that because he does bring the pass catching element. And of course, no Jordan Mason. So he could just volume his way to a good game.
I think it's just too early for ownership stuff to say anything confidently. I want to say stuff confidently with ownership, but I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I think we got to wait basically. Are you seeing anything, Kyle, as far as taking big ownership stands, or I just feel better like waiting as opposed to throwing out potential misinformation?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly feel like we're better off waiting. I mean, for us, like on the model side of things, like we're still running the ownership model. So like looking at some of the back end stuff, I would guess that Aaron Jones is the 4th most popular running back. Like I think Jahmyr Gibbs, RJ Harvey, Javonte Williams will be the top 3. And then Aaron Jones will probably have a little bit of a teardrop after those guys there, just because, again, you have to play 2 running backs. And, obviously with the flex spot, maybe we'll see a good amount of lineups with 3, with all 3 of those guys being pretty strong plays. But so, yeah, I would say that probably 30 to 40% range for Aaron Jones would be a spot where I would guess. But again, could easily see him coming down on that a little bit just because he's not that much of a discount compared to guys like RJ Harvey and Javonte Williams. So people are able to find the extra $600 to $800 for those guys. I certainly think the public would rather play those 2 guys.
Anything else here, boys, as far as Detroit, Minnesota, or shall we move on?
I just want to hit the Spellkowski said Detroit played a lot more zone coverage last week. So they played Aaron Rodgers And for anybody that followed, Aaron Rodgers is like the greatest quarterback in the history of. I mean, he's already one of the best ever. But like against man coverage, it's like he just cooks. You can't stop him, even when DK Metcalf can't catch and is punching horrible human fans. It made more sense against Aaron Rodgers to play more zone coverage, whereas against Max Brosmer, I think they're just gonna be like, okay, come on, buddy, go ahead and beat us. We're gonna do our thing.
That makes sense. Denver, Kansas City, the nightcap here. This is the Amazon Prime game, 36.5 total. Kansas City, Denver's double them up as far as team total. Team total 25, KC 11.5. They're 14.5 point home dogs. The absence, of course, of Patrick Mahomes. Chris Oladokun. I have the phonetic spelling here next to me. I had the cheat on that. He's going to be quarterbacking here. We did mention Travis Kelce. I assume we're all assuming kind of sort of he's going to be done after this year. This seems like the swan song. I guess if he cares about such things as being the second all-time leading receiver for tight ends, he needs 90-plus yards in the next 2 games. But this offense does not project to be very functional, especially against a really good defense here in Denver. Kyle, get us started here as far as Denver, KC starts wherever you want to start, which is probably Denver. I don't know. You tell me.
I mean, the spot I would probably start would be RJ Harvey and the Denver side here. I mean, I think it's no secret. This game is brutal. We have a team with an 11.5 team total. It's going to be pretty ugly. RJ Harvey has, looked really good. He's like, it just seems like he's scoring every single week, right? So he's got 21 DK points in 3 of his last 4 games. I think he has 5 touchdowns in that time frame as well. So consistently finding the end zone. So, while we're seeing a couple of guys, we'll see McLaughlin mix in a little bit here and there. I think that, similar to the Malik Davis angle, you could maybe play the Jaleel McLaughlin angle with, maybe the blowout coming into this game pretty early. McLaughlin's certainly a guy who we've seen have some big play ability at times. Last week he averaged 7.5 carries on his, or 7.5 yards per carry, I think, on his 5 carries. A couple weeks ago against the Raiders, he had 5.5 yards per carry on 4 carries. So I think that there's a world where maybe we see 6, 7, 8+ carries from McLaughlin, and maybe he can get going a little bit and some blowout run. So you could also make the case where maybe it gets so bad to where Bidet is the one that gets the run, so it gets a little bit murky to project in that world. But I think McLaughlin's still a little bit more of a higher upside, one play payday type guy. But RJ Harvey's still going to be the guy that projects really well across the industry, and people are going to play him, and it's really hard to say otherwise. I'm assuming Kansas City's probably pretty checked out at this point. They've lost, obviously, Patrick Mahomes. Their season is officially over. Now their team is moving to a different state, which everybody's all up in arms about.
Is that officially happening?
Yeah, 2030 or 31, I think. They're moving to Kansas.
Okay, I didn't see that. I know they were talking about it.
Across the border, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure it's not a too far of a move, but the different state, I know that was a thing.
Missouri people are not happy, Dean.
Yeah.
Missouri people are not very happy. And they're blowing up. That's a great sporting little complex that they have out there. The Royals and the Chiefs are all in the same little spot. It's a great place to go watch sports, and that will be no longer.
Oh, that's unfortunate. Well, it's like 5-6 years. They got to build the stadium, obviously, but still, that's a bummer. Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, so we'll see how the game shakes out. Obviously, that was just a fun little thing to throw in there. But Denver, with obviously Courtland Sutton had the big game last week against the Jags. He's going to be the guy that projects the best, but he's also going to have the most ownership. I think that there are some interesting ways to maybe play this Denver side of things. Humphrey, I think, is a really good call. I like that 3-3 play here on DraftKings. You have Troy Franklin at 5K as well. Marvin Mims is maybe a little bit too expensive because, like Eric mentioned, we just want him to play more, but he just never will. Like he will never be a guy who can get the full-time snaps, at least over a consistent period of time. But similar to Turpin, if you're going to play a cheap guy who can score without touching the ball on offense, or maybe only 1 or 2 touches on offense, there's probably not too many guys other than Marvin Mims who I would put up there in terms of breaking a big play for a touchdown. So I certainly think Mims is still in play. So I'm going to have some exposure to this Denver receiver core. It's just more so a matter of how I end up wanting to adjust for them based on ownership, because I'm probably not going to want to play anybody at super high ownership on Denver, because I think this game does get out of control really fast and they're not really forced to throw the ball much. But if there's going to be some lower owned plays, I would not mind banking on one of these guys to break a big play. On the other side for Kansas City, Olajuwon is a guy who, last week when I was watching the game with some friends and everyone's like, oh, Minshew's hurt, who's going to come in? And I said his name and everyone's laughing at me like, how the hell
you knew it?
Yeah, because Olajuwon's been the preseason guy for 5 years. He's been around. He comes in and just runs the ball. He doesn't even really ever throw the ball. So everyone was making fun of me for that, which I thought was hilarious. But he is a guy who does have some rushing upside. I wish it wasn't this matchup against Denver, because obviously with the slate being so bad, if you had to talk me into it, you can maybe make a case for maybe he has 50, 60 yards rushing. Maybe he finds the end zone somehow. It's obviously a stretch here, but and I would probably say it's more of a disaster waiting to happen rather than anything good coming from it. But if I were to make a case for it, it would be he's probably the quarterback with the most rushing upside of these backup quarterbacks. So that's the one case I could make. We've talked about the Kelsey narrative where, yes, I'm sure they'll all want to get him as involved, because it does feel like these are going to be his last 2 games of his career, and they'd love to give him a good send-off, but can they? That's going to be a big question. So it's tough to really play that narrative, but I would say he's probably the best tight end from a ceiling perspective, maybe. Like if they can somehow find a way to get the ball in his hands 5 or 6 times and maybe find the end zone. It's just a really bad tight end slate. So Kelsey, I think, is still fine, but tight end's probably going to be a position that I'm just looking to spend as little salary as possible while not completely playing the worst possible option. So Travis Kelce's probably not going to be a guy I'm going to all that often.
So I pulled up Olajuwon's college stats, and the stuff I was seeing, I didn't realize he played for 5 different teams, looks like. Samford in 2019, 491 yards, South Dakota State in 2021, 161 on the ground, South Florida USF in 2018. Samford again. Okay, so 3 different teams. That just, for some reason, it's listed strangely. But, okay, so he did show some wheels in college. Eric, you're making how many lineups until you say, you know what, screw it, I'm going to make a Kansas City stack, or at least start with Olajuwon?
About 500. I don't know.
He's just not in your pool.
No, I'm it's probably a slight exaggeration, because I don't know how many permutations of lineups on this slate you could even get to that project reasonably well, but it's a very low number. But again, I'm always coming at it right from like a smaller field. Like I'm more of like the 3 max, 5 max type. Like I'll probably play 1 lineup on this slate. And so okay. It's I'm thinking about it from that perspective. But I like in a 150 in the like to be able to jam. I don't even know if I would stack them with. I don't know. I haven't thought maybe enough about it, because I think the rushing angle is what you're really, really shooting for. It's like, dude, go run. Go, like, I don't really care how many yards you pass for. Like, just go run for 80 yards and a touchdown or something like that. And like, that's enough, because like Dak Prescott is great and probably going to have a nice score here. But like even Jared Goff, like in his good games, isn't putting up such a number that you're like, oh my God, I can't fade that. And Bo Nix on the other side, whatever, same thing. So it would be more like like you said, no tight end blows up the slate, no quarterback blows up the slate. That would be a reason to playing with Kelsey, right? If he throws a touchdown to Travis Kelsey, that little combo could be really, really good. So I think it would be more like about that. And then we talked about RJ Harvey. You could, of course, still play RJ Harvey on that team, but I think getting away from the Broncos defense would be really helpful, specifically in large field tournaments, because I mean, everybody probably saw the chat. It's like everybody Chiefs, Broncos. Okay, Broncos defense, RJ Harvey. Let's move on. Let's go on to the next thing. And that makes sense, right? But like from a game theory perspective, it doesn't mean he's going to turn it over. It doesn't mean he's going to take sacks, especially if he's running. So that would be the angle. But I'm still just in my like one team. I don't know that I'll play the Broncos defense, but RJ Harvey's probably coming along for the ride. Though I am like a sliver concerned about like the backfield stuff, because if it is not close, RJ Harvey's been getting there through a lot of passing, receiving touchdowns, which has been a little bit fluky. And he did pop a big play, finally. But it was last week, I think. I pulled up the quote where Sean Payton talked about he knows he needs to get McLaughlin the ball a little bit more. and Bidet is like the passing down back, even though Harvey plays some passing downs too. It's like, if he doesn't score a touchdown and they do get out to this lead, he's definitely going to get carries. But then is he like splitting rushing work with McLaughlin in the second half and like not catching any passes? The next thing you know, it becomes pretty flimsy. And the Chiefs defense loud quit. That wasn't even a quiet quit last week. That was a straight up we're quitting, telling everybody, getting carved up by the Tennessee Titans. But it's still not a bad unit. Maybe they have a little bit of pride, on a divisional matchup on Christmas. That hasn't been a great matchup to target all year. So it's like it's a little similar to the Gibbs thing. I'm like, it's the best play, but if you like really get into it, it's like I could definitely see a fade being really, really strong here. It's just we also have to have alternative options to plug into our team. So it's tricky, but I do still like RJ Harvey, of course.
I do love when a coach comes out and says, especially like a running back, we got to figure out a way to get the ball in this guy's hands more. And it's like that, it's the hot dog gif, right?
He said it about Harvey early in the season when he's like, we just got to get Harvey the ball a little bit more. And I'm like, when you say we,
I have some idea.
Specifically, who are you talking about? Because you're the one calling the plays, dude. Like, I don't understand this. And now he's just on to the next guy.
You mentioned like we want to make Mims happen. Is there a chance that Kansas City eliminated a guy we've been wanting to make happen since the start of the season? It seems like Brashard Smith. Is that something that's possible? I mean, again, this is like ambitious. This is, you're talking about the playmaker contest that I don't play either. The ones that like 40% up top, you're just shooting for first. This is where you have that kind of thought process or so. I know a lot of people have Jalen Royals in their best ball team. That's probably not happening.
I was hoping we would make it without bringing up that name.
Sorry. It's a sensitive topic.
He was on all of my advancing teams because I drafted him so much. He certainly wasn't helping.
He's still there. He made it. He got dragged along. Shout out to him.
Those 3 snaps last week were a lot of fun.
You got to play one player on Kansas City. Buying for you got to pick one?
Yeah, I mean, setting aside Kelsey because of the tight end stuff, I do think it might be Brashard Smith because of what you said. Pacheco kind of took over a lot of that backfield, catching a bunch of checkdowns and everything. I find it hard to believe that that's like their sustainable plan. I think it was like, oh no, Mahomes is hurt. Now Minshew is hurt. Do we really want to introduce Brashard Smith into this whole thing? Like Juju played every snap. Pacheco was playing a whole bunch. But I think with a couple more days and understanding like what the deal is now, I think we could get there. They're almost assuredly going to manufacture a couple of Brashard Smith touches. What does that mean? I have no idea. But I think he would be the like we flip over. You're going to bed on Christmas, and you're like, wow, Brashard Smith touched the ball 14 times. I would not be shocked by that. Whereas I would like Jalen Royals needs to get to 14 snaps before he gets to gets the touches. I think Brashard Smith could be the random. Totally off. Right. We talked about Malik Davis and even McLaughlin and stuff. I think I would probably swing on Brashard Smith.
Yeah. And it's not like you need to see what you have. You're talking about receivers. Like they know what they have in Juju Smith-Schuster. And like, I can't imagine that's something they need to run into the ground, but you never really know what they're up to. And they never really have been in this predicament either. So who knows how they're going to handle this. And Hunt, Pacheco, I don't know. It's an interesting darts, Brashard Smith, but certainly the floor is like 1. Maybe 0. It's possibly 0. Kyle, anything else you want to say as far as Denver, KC before we circle back and give, quick hitters, favorite plays, position by position?
No, I mean, this is certainly the ugliest game of the board for me. I think I touched. I don't mind the Brashard Smith call. That's like one of those, similar to McLaughlin and Malik Davis. Like if you're just looking to find a guy that's going to be like sub 1% owned on the board. So I think that's a good name to throw out as that. But other than that, not too much else that I would want to highlight.
Do you know how many lineups you're playing? At Bond for is going to have like one main lineup. It sounds like. Are you somebody that's going to run 150 or 20? You're still kind of figuring it out.
I probably won't do 150 just because I'll be also doing NBA stuff throughout the day. So I'll probably just do a couple, probably 3 to 5 at most. Okay.
All right. Let's circle back. Let's give our favorite plays position by position. There's only 6 quarterbacks here buying for. You don't have to give the people, but are you settling? Are you figuring out 1 or 2 guys you're honing in on as far as your main quarterback? This week?
I mean, I want to play Dak, but I actually kind of like the Brosmer angle, so it'll probably be Dak or Brosmer. I do because I just like the idea as we talked it through a little bit more too. Like, well, we were talking about it with the Street Fighter fella, but we just punting it off with like no quarterback goes crazy, but then I can get that right. That this is how I can get the expensive guys, and I banked my 14 points or whatever.
The cap's pretty loose on DK because we're not spending up for like a Puka or CMC. It's fairly like there's like one bad player kind of sort of, and everything else just sort of falls into place. We're not spending up on a big tight end either. I think it's a little bit tougher on FanDuel, but on DK the cap is pretty loose. What I saw.
I'm trying not to click Lil Jordan Humphrey, Dean, with all my might. So whatever I got to do to not spend the end of my Christmas day watching Lil Jordan Humphrey run routes would be nice.
And then like Michael Bandy, like he gets a touchdown.
Yes.
He sneaks in. He snuck in last week, I think, didn't he? I feel like that happened.
He did, yes.
Didn't make that up. Kyle, your favorite quarterback or two?
Yeah, I think I'm probably going to lean into that middle game here and play either Goff or Brosmer the most. Obviously, I have no problem with Dak. I can't really make a pitch against it. It's more so I'm probably going to be looking to find ways to get a little bit different, and I think you can maybe take a chance. It's actually fairly similar to the Thanksgiving Day slate, which is kind of strange because you have a lot of overlapping teams here, and it's only a 3-game slate, but it worked out. Not playing Dak and then having success with, obviously you have to have production elsewhere, but you can get a lot of production for maybe one of those pass catchers for Dallas. So I'll probably take that route. If I do end up playing 5 lineups, I'll certainly have some Dak, but if I'm only playing 1 to 3, it would probably be Goff and Brosmer for me for the majority of those lineups.
See Joseph here in chat says, in my group chat, I'm seeing core lineups with Dak, Pickens, Lamb, and Ferguson. It's kind of sort of somewhat, it's an onslaught, essentially, with the exception of Javonte Williams. And he's asking if that's a must. I wouldn't say it's a must. Would you say it's a must, Eric? No, that's not a must. You can. No. It's a can. It's not a must. Yeah. Okay. Running backs. Give me your favorite running backs, Kyle.
Yeah, I mean, it is pretty chalky, but Gibbs, Javonte Williams, RJ Harvey, it's going to be more so about the way I'm building lineups and, which teams I'm deciding to use the passing offense with. Like if I'm playing the Detroit pass attack in a big way, I'm probably not going to play Gibbs. If I'm not playing Gibbs, I'm probably going to have a little bit more interest in David Montgomery. So it's more so, obviously, everyone knows that those are the top 3 running backs on the board. I think there's a couple of guys in the mid-tier that you can make a case for. Aaron Jones, Chris Rodriguez, Montgomery, even Isaiah Pacheco to an extent. And then there's those, crazy punt options, Malik Davis, McNichols, McLaughlin, even Brashard Smith. So there's like 3 tiers. It's like the studs, the mid-tier guys that you could maybe make a case for if you're looking for some lineup fillers, and then the random crazy tournament plays that we've kind of touched on as the show's gone on. So that's kind of the way that I'm looking at it, and it's more so building the lineups correctly. But the favorites would be the chalky guys for me.
Eric, running backs?
Pretty much the same, though. I'm basically monitoring like 2 situations, and it's the Gibbs thing because of, like we talked about, with the offensive line, and of course with his extreme ownership, and I think that's what makes the Lions passing game appealing. But also David Montgomery, right? It's kind of like if David Montgomery ends up the one getting the touchdowns and not Jahmyr Gibbs, I think that would make him pretty interesting. And then the same thing with Aaron Jones. Like I'm not sure Aaron Jones. I don't know where he should, I guess, be from an ownership perspective, like efficient ownership wise, but it just feels weird to me, like workhorse Aaron Jones in like, kind of a shootout ish against a run defense that just gave up like 400 rushing yards or whatever, and he catches passes at 5,700 on this slate being like not super chalky feels a little bit wrong to me, just like at a macro level. I understand the texture. So I'll be like monitoring Gibbs, monitoring Aaron Jones. If I have to pivot away or on to them, that will be my kind of probably like my final decision point of the slate.
Your like most ambitious nonsense running back option, Eric, would be who?
Oh God. I think McLaughlin is my favorite amongst all of them.
Okay. Yeah. Receivers, buying for. What do you got as far as wide receivers?
But there's actually a lot of receivers to like. I think I would rank amongst the top guys. I think I would go CD, J-Mo, Amon-Ra, Pickens, which seems, I know Pickens can do what Pickens does, but Pickens can also do the I'm not really that interested in playing football today type thing at any moment, and I'm pretty interested in playing into that if he's going to be super popular. CeeDee Lamb just like hasn't put up a like truly monster score all year, and I think that's really ultimately what has kept while his price still stays fairly high, kept his ownership in check like all the time, and there is almost no better spot than this one for him to do that. And I really do like Justin Jefferson. So like if you're deciding like Cortland Sutton, I can't believe this is a decision. Cortland Sutton, Troy Franklin, Terry McLaurin, or Justin Jefferson. I do think I like Justin Jefferson the best.
That's
kind
wild.
of the next, but that's like the pricing tier he's in, which is pretty crazy. Same thing like Debo and stuff. Like, just give me Justin Jefferson. I'm kind of trusting in what we saw last week a little bit, plus the Lions pass defense. And then if we got to go down all the way to the basement, right? I think, again, I'm assuming we're recording early, all the caveats, right? I'm assuming Flanoy is out, which puts Kevontae Turpin kind of somewhere near the top. Like, if I'm onsodding the Cowboys passing game, I think I might like Turpin more than Jake Ferguson and do something different at tight end. You can get Gibbs and all those guys then with it too. And then, like I mentioned, the Lil Jordan Humphrey thing. I mean, I just literally do straight up think he's going to play like a huge percentage of the snaps. It's just how many times do they care to pass or whatever? Because this is what happens when Pat Bryant goes out. Lil Jordan Humphrey steps in, and it is what it is. I don't have to like it, but it is factual.
Kyle?
Yeah, can't really protest the Humphrey call there. I think Humphrey and Burks are probably my two favorite cheapies.
Yeah,
I think
Burks. Good call.
I think you can still. Again, it feels pretty thin with Burks, but he played a lot last week, and I do think he's still going to be reliant on a big player to maybe finding the end zone. But I think that's kind of the case for the majority of these value guys. So again, it's like the whole slate is basically finding these cheap guys that you have to play that aren't going to kill you. But it sort of feels like even if one does kill you, there's a good chance that there's no good options. So it doesn't feel the worst to look at some of these punt options. So I'm a little bit more okay with playing guys like Treylon Burks and Humphrey. I think my favorite receiver on the board, though, is Jameson Williams at 6'4". I think just where we're at price-wise and how he's been producing. I know a lot of the talk has been since Dan Campbell has taken over play calling, but bottom line, he's just been really good. Other than that Giants game, I know last week he wasn't all that great, but he's been fantastic. He had 9 targets last week, only caught 5 of them. I feel like if he goes out there and gets 9 targets in a spot like this, where yes, there's going to be a lot of pressure and a lot of tough things being thrown at them defensively by the Vikings, but I think there's a chance that he can certainly break a big one. So I think JMO's going to be my favorite receiver on the board.
Kyle, tight ends?
I would like to just skip it and not play a tight end, but if I have to, I really do think that like my goal is to spend as little salary here as possible. Ideally, I think my favorite play, as ugly as it sounds, would be TJ Hawkinson, but he might not play. If he does sit, I'm probably going to have more interest in Josh Oliver at 2.8. I know Sinnett we've been talking about, not even this year, but even last year, he had some hype coming into the season, and it just has never really panned out. But if you're going to play a guy who, if you're looking to go by the theory of spend as little as possible without, shooting yourself in the foot, 2.6 for a guy who's going to play 60-70% of the snaps, I think he's certainly in line here. I'm probably not all that interested in playing Jake Ferguson, especially if he's going to be 50% owned. I would rather play Kelsey over Ferguson, and I feel pretty strongly about that. If the ownership is going to be where we're projecting right now, or it's almost double. I know Ferguson certainly has the better team and the better quarterback, but from an ownership perspective, I'll as gross as it sounds, I'll take Kelsey there. But again, I do think I'm probably not spending up too much for either of those guys on the slate and looking to get some salary relief here.
Running some early optimals. Hawkinson's the guy that's landing in most of the lineups that I have set up. I'm kind of hoping that he doesn't play and Oliver becomes the thing. I like him as a punt. He's my favorite punt as far as tight ends. Eric, what would you like to add? I know you're very excited to talk about tight ends.
Yeah, no, there's not a single name on here that I'm interested in talking about if someone wasn't paying me to do so. It's pretty clearly, though, Josh Oliver for sure. I will say, I think one of the Lions guys might just score a touchdown and be the thing. I don't have any idea who it's going to be, but I think that one of the Lions guys would make a lot of sense to we just talked about, everybody's going to fail. We're not excited to talk about any of these guys. Ben Sinnott, congrats. He's going to get 3 targets or whatever in this game. And you're hoping for a touchdown. What better team to hope for a chaotic touchdown to one of these tight ends than the Detroit Lions? So I agree. I was probably slandering Kelsey a little bit too much just because the slate is that bad at tight end that it doesn't really matter. He can easily be the highest raw scorer. But again, if there's no difference maker, I do want, even though I'm torn on Jahmyr Gibbs, I want all these spend ups and there's absolutely no opportunity cost at tight end. So like whoever is kind of like not going to be played, basically. Oliver would be my priority. I suspect he would become pretty popular if Hawkinson was out. But if he's not, yeah, sign me up for Sinnott or Ferkser or Brock Wright, right? Or whatever. Like sign me up for one of these guys.
Is Brock Wright healthy? I don't think he's playing.
No, it's Zylstra, right? It's Zylstra now. Yeah.
Yeah. I got this from Rebar's worksheet, but yeah, Fersker was 4 for 40 last week on 20 routes. Zylstra, 3 for 20 on 37 routes for Zylstra.
Because Ferkser can't block, so it would probably be Zylstra that's up, right? You get the goal line fake right now if they don't throw it to the offensive lineman. You know, it would probably be Zylstra that's out there.
They might do something fun when the season's basically kind of sort of somewhat over. You know, you never really know.
Zylstra throws a touchdown. Yeah.
Detroit seems like the kind of team that would have fun. Do we have any defensive takes? Anything defense, Kyle? I mean, is this the dartboard kind of thing, or is there a lean for you as far as defense?
I mean, I'm typically going to make the case for, you know, after I build a lineup, just whatever team is not facing as many players in my lineup as possible. But I think if I were, you know, looking to build, you know, just defense to start, I think the Broncos defense would be my favorite defense. They are the most expensive on the board, and they're probably going to be pretty popular. But I'm probably not going to get to a ton of them just because they are going to be like probably 50% owned if I had to guess, at least like 35-40%. So probably fade them and hope that they don't kill me, which maybe isn't the best idea there, but because they probably will. But after Broncos, Cowboys, and Lions, obviously you have a lot of backup quarterbacks to attack. If I was looking to play one of the non-obvious spots, Kansas City might be the team just because they're the cheapest. But we've certainly seen you know, Bo Nix be willing and able to turn the ball over at times. So I think that the top three defenses are pretty obvious, but if I'm looking to punt, you might as well just go all the way down and save as much salary as possible with the Chiefs there at 2-2.
Eric, if you have a defensive thought, fire away. Otherwise, give me your favorite stack or two. If you want to give me like a game stack, you want to give me an onslaught, you want to give me a skinny, whatever you want to give me.
I will just say that the Lions defense is interesting to me against. I know I like Brosmer, but I also watched that like whirling dervish interception in Seattle. And I don't think he's particularly good, even though I might play him in my DFS lineup. Aiden Hutchinson is still there, right? It's a salty enough Lions defense, I guess I'll say. But I'm probably going to play the Broncos, and I'm figuring out ways to play the Broncos. So how do I do that? As much as I like Dak Prescott, maybe right, it's one of these other stacks like you talked about. The Lions thing has really grown on me. Kyle talked about like a Goff double, Goff triple. Right? How does Gibbs not get home? Right? Bring Zylstra along for the ride or whatever. Now you get a low-owned tight end plus leverage off of Jahmyr Gibbs. I think that makes a ton of sense. Flores kind of selling out to stop this Lions rushing game, and Goff hitting a couple big plays over the top at totally reasonable ownership for the Lions passing game seems good to me.
Cal, you got a favorite stack for me?
I think it's going to be likely the Lions here as well. Maybe I'll talk myself into making, you know, Brosmer the top stack on the board for me, but I feel like if I had to come into the slate picking a top stack, it's going to be Detroit right now.
All right, that is going to wrap it up. We do appreciate y'all tuning in. If you're watching us live, hit that like button, do subscribe, turn on notifications, stick around for basketball. I'm talking basketball about 15 minutes or so. If you're watching us on a recording, if you're watching us, you know, on Christmas morning, Merry Christmas. Either way, enjoy yourself. Happy holiday. Merry Christmas. That was Kyle Murray. That was Eric Bindford. Behind the scenes, we have producer Steve. I was Dean. Go win some money. Take it down.